Hello everyone, hope you guys can hear me well. Welcome to another community call, number 11 this time. Today we're gonna have a call sort of split into two halves. The first half is gonna be about DAO risk managed vaults, specifically alignment before launch. So this will be sort of around structure, risk boundaries, operational responsibilities, and what the DAO is actually signing up for. Whereas the second half, we will shift towards the Delegate reward framework version 2, where I guess we need to reconcile incentive alignment with the treasury reality, and we'll have like somewhat of a working session around that in the second half of the call. So I'm really looking forward towards that. Both topics seems to be really about the same thing: how we take the ownership as a DAO. I want to explicitly thank Analytica, Chris, same here as you, Curia, and all recognized delegates joining today, because this call will only work if multiple perspectives are present. So we can kick it off with the DAO-Managed votes. I'll just try to frame it, and then I will ask Chris or Jordan if he's around, and then Analytica to chime in where you guys see relevant. Maybe just to ground us in what the DAO risk managed votes are, and so these are not specifically Analytica risk rated votes, and they are sort of DAO directed, sometimes referred to as indexed votes, where ARC inclusion rules are somewhat predefined within the framework that I believe Analytica will share with us. Something that they've been working on lately and is now posted on the forum. Categories define exposure limits, and responsibilities distributed between the DAO keepers, I guess the guardians, right? The trade-off here is quite explicit. We gain flexibility and the DAO level control, and we lose per ARC discretionary risk assessment. Chris, if you don't mind, from a product positioning standpoint, how should delegates think about these votes inside the Lazy Summer protocol? Are they experimental capital allocators? Are they more sort of diversification tools, or something else in your view?
Yeah, firstly, hi, and welcome. So I mean, I think the votes really need to be viewed as a kind of different category of vote within Lazy Summer, right? Like, I don't think they're experimentation or anything like that. Like, they use the same underlying keeper network and so on. But crucially, I think, and as kind of we outlined in the RFC and so on, like there are obviously multiple types of users within DeFi, some sophisticated, some less sophisticated, and the lazy vaults have the current risk managed, actively risk managed lazy vaults have a very particular segment within the kind of DeFi kind of user group and so on, and they kind of have that unique position and so on there, and do that job very well. But they don't obviously offer the slightly higher yields and so on for those that are happy to go a little bit further out on the risk curve. And for some and for some users, they're looking for both, right? They're looking for the kind of like the risk adjusted returns, the knowledge that some of their capital is being actively risk managed and probably considered much safer in reality. But they are probably, and we know this from speaking to people in like kind of the same hue as you and so on, and Jordan, things like that. Like they speak to these users often, and we know that the same users that deploy to these vaults are still deploying capital to some of the kind of higher risk markets, individual allocations, and so on. And that's what these vaults are intended to target. Ultimately, they're intended to target those that are looking for maybe slightly further out on the risk curve, want to always be allocating pretty much all of the capital to like the highest yields on vaults, FYI, for example, and that's exactly what these vaults are intending to try and do for that. So it's definitely not an experimentation or anything like that. They are the same lazy vaults, pretty much like the same architecture, and so on. They do They have got a couple of like specific parameters where guardians, for example, this time can set the markets, the art markets to 0 if there's an issue, instead of it because there's no risk manager and so on. But very much the DAO will control the risk parameters and so on. And like you said, thanks to Block Analytica, there's a very transparent risk framework out there now. Just at the very start, like kind of a few minutes before the end of the start of this call, we also just published the first SIP proposal to onboard the first vault, which is the USDC vault onto Ethereum. There will also be an ETH one coming up very shortly. But yeah, all based, like all of the recommendations basically based on the framework on there. There is a kind of DAO discretion kind of option within the framework that we've kind of put forward for 2 markets on there. Kind of fell slightly outside of the kind of proposed categories and so on. But yeah, like, so take a look at that proposal. It just went up. I should have a link to it somewhere. I can post in here, and yeah, that outlines again kind of what we've just been talking about around the kind of target user group and so on, and the kind of 14 markets that will initially be added to this USDC vault on there. And with that, there is also then a kind of the risk assessment that's been done for these vaults with the status and so on there. So yeah, hopefully that clarifies that.
Nice. Thank you so much. Maybe we can start sort of talking here about the risk framework itself. There was a proposal, a SIP 5.19, which allocates $25,000 from the Treasury to Block Analytica to build this framework. This was sort of requested from Block Analytica as experts in the field to define sort of the rule book around these DAO risk managed vaults. If any of you guys are here, could you walk us through the philosophy behind the hard filters? I guess maybe I can point towards like the protocol age requirement, the audit standards, the TVL API screen logic. I guess yeah, we can just go through the framework that you guys proposed.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, so I'm here like also part of the Block Analytica team. So yeah, so I think like in a summary, what we wanted to build is something like based on our experience while working on the DA-Managed vaults, right? We learned, right? Also we detected, let's say, the pain points, also like what are the, you know, like on a nutshell, on a simpler framework, what can we, like, you know, like consider like a safe arc or like mid-risk arc or like, you know, like more risky arc. And then the challenge was like create something that is kind of generic, so in a way that everybody could verify in principle. Of course, there are some challenges, right? Like for instance, when one goes to the collateral analysis, which is like this needs to be done really like at the collateral level, which is like beyond this framework. And also, for instance, things like the Oracle risk and so on. But let's say, but besides these very important things, so we kind of like compiled this document that is already on the forum, and then we said basically we separated in 2 things. One are like hard filters, right? And once like an arc pass the hard filters, then it can go to be categorized either A, B, or C, right? Depends on the risk profile. And then at a summary, basically we collected a couple of important variables on it, as such as the protocol age. And this is also because, I mean, in DeFi there are more and more protocols coming up, but then, you know, there needs to be some sort of control on the maturity of those before SummerFi can deploy capital there just for safety. So then, and the reason why, for instance, we choose like, let's say 6 months around as a minimum is because when one wants to run any type of statistics or like you know, risk analysis on a quantitative level, I mean, you need to have enough data points, right? And I think like this is kind of like a good starting point. But you will see, for instance, for the category A, B, C, I mean, this protocol H will play a better role, right? Because, for example, category A, then the protocol needs to be much better established, right, and so on and so forth. Audit status are the same, so like we think that some of the the protocol or the yield source in this case needs to have like a proper audit. Just, I mean, I think the reason for that is like straightforward, don't need explaining. PDL and IPY screening, this is something that we already posted also on the past, and it is basically because somehow it doesn't make sense to add an arc that it doesn't help the APY of the fleet, but increase like a lot the risk, right? So this is something like you cannot like 10 more arcs, but if they are not really contributing or they are very much to the APY of the fleet, so then you just end up being like much more exposed to an enormous amount of collaterals without gaining anything for the users. So then there is like the backend liquidity, so which is like also because the way the Summer 5 protocol works is that it needs like the ability to be rebalancing positions, and if backend liquidity is locked, so then it will jeopardize this purpose, right? So that's why we also put it also as a hard filter, mostly like on operational level. And the next thing is like transparency. I think like everybody knows that DeFi is characterized by transparency. Whether it is off-chain, on-chain, it doesn't matter. But let's say, of course, when it's on-chain, it's better because like anyone can verify. When there is not the possibility to be on-chain, maybe because like they have some sort of like for instance, Ethereum or something, they have assets on centralized exchanges. At least they should have like some sort of like attestation or like, you know, from third parties like auditing that the reserves are there and so on and so forth, because I mean transparency I think is key. The asset allow list, I think this is just more like to let's say for the start, right? So I mean there is no, I think it's more to limit the scope a little bit so that there is also like some sort of like threshold of the amount of networks that are like or like assets, but let's say there is not really like a very strong reason why we couldn't use any other asset, right? It's more like to start, and this framework anyways will evolve over time. So then as we see that the system grows and then it's getting more established, so we can add other type of assets. For asset liquidity, I mean, this one is very important because you know, like typically, I mean, like right now as the vaults that are managed by Block Analytica, they don't need up to now like some sort of a token swap, which is great. But as soon as you include this token swap, let's say if you deposit USDC, but then it needs to be swapped before going into the yield source or something. So then we need to account for price impact. And the thing is like how the way we compute, let's say this kind of like number of 0.05% is more like thinking that if the protocol will make a weekly rebalance, right, it should at least be like it shouldn't eat the whole APY over the year, let's say. So let's say of the lowest yield, let's say like the ETH vault that typically has like a lower yield. So that's why we came up with this like let's say a guideline number. But of course, I mean, also, like, I mean, just to say in general, so this is like this framework we really created departing from the experience we have seen by treating all the arcs and the whole system, how it works. But the DAO has full, let's say, authority to override, or if it thinks that there is maybe some yield sources that are really good, but then maybe it doesn't pass one of the hard filter or something, of course. I mean, that's the idea, right? So these vaults are like DAO-managed. So this is just like more to create like a guideline, so it's like easy to pick, rely on like that type of like assigning some kind of like risk assessment on the arc, and trying to group all the possibilities in one, right? And this is a little bit of the challenge. So that's why it's like there may be edge cases, and then I think for those edge cases is where the DAO can basically say, okay, no, we think that this protocol, even though it doesn't fulfill this and that, but it's like, you know, very big, very well established, so then it can pass, and then we assign it as category A, for instance. I mean, this can definitely happen, right? Because that's the whole point of the DAO managed vaults. Yeah, so I think like, so these are the hard filters. I don't know if there are any questions about it. I mean, we can continue like giving like a broad description of it, but I just want to know if there is maybe any questions about the hard filters.
Thank you so much for bringing this. Yeah, of course, if anybody has any question, please do raise your hands. I actually have one myself, and I'm just curious, where do you see, you already mentioned these sort of edge cases, where do you see the biggest edge cases here? Is it like some sort of the leverage disclosures, cross-chain backing?
No, it's
backing
actually,
attestations, or?
Yeah, it's actually, for instance, Sky, right? The Sky is one of the edge cases in this case. Because even though, I mean, Sky is quite like mature, very well established, it's huge, I mean, it's big and it has reputation, but let's say it's cross-chain, right? So the fact that it's a cross-chain makes it a little bit like a complex strategy, and that's why, for instance, it wouldn't fit in category A within this framework, but we do think that it should be category A, right? So I mean, this is like these edge cases where like you know, like you cannot just globalize everything, because I think like the majority of the cross-chain strategies that are out there, or at least that we have analyzed, they are quite risky. So that's why we don't consider it category A. But the Sky is one of those where it is, right? So that's, I think, like the biggest edge case.
Got you. I'm thinking that, I don't know, of course, maybe not everybody has managed to walk through or to read through the whole sort of proposal for the framework, and here I maybe wanted to shine a bit more light into these categories that we already started talking about. So they seem to not necessarily be labels, they kind of like, they are proposing a direct control here, right? So like there is a max cap as percentage of yield, source liquidity, as percentage of fleet TVL, rebalance inflows, outflows, whether leverage or delta neutral strategies are allowed. To me, this is, I guess, where delegates will need to lean in, because like it could be that category A can hold up to 100% of the fleet TVL, category C caps at 30%. And so now maybe my question here is, how did you decide on those percentage thresholds? Are they conservative relative to market norms?
Yeah, so basically, so first of all, I mean, the categories are like, if you want to just in few words explain what is category A, B, and C. So category A is let's say a very well established strategy that has no leverage, delta neutral, there is no like, you know, like any type of like exit period or queuing system, or there is like no cross-chain backing. So then let's say you can put some of them, right? As long as there is one, let's say either a leverage position or delta neutral or this, so then we said, okay, there is like an additional vertical of risk, right? So that's why then based on that, we say, okay, now it's category B, right? And then as soon as there are like two, more than one, let's say 2 or 3, or like the strategy is very complex, let's say a mix of them, like they are, for instance, right now, like even on the forum, so then they could be like category C. So now, why the percentages? So I think like definitely, I mean, it makes sense to, let's say if it's high confidence, I mean, in principle, it means that you can deploy all the capital on those arcs, right? So that's why the maximum percentage of it is 100%. 70% is just like an estimation based on the fact that, let's say, even if you deploy all the capital, let's say, on a very big protocol, right? So if it's a lending protocol, you still have an utilization, right? And then if for some reason this utilization gets to 99%, for instance, so then you won't be able to withdraw. And this again jeopardizes a bit the idea of the rebalancing, right? So and then sometimes like one can think, okay, yeah, but if utilization goes to 99% means that the yield is very high, and this is true. So typically it's not like a big problem. But on the other hand, it's like, you know, assets get stuck, right? And this is something like, it may be annoying in many other ways. So that's why we thought, okay, it's like something like 70% based on that, I mean, it should be like what we have observed, right? Like running also our quantitative model for the managed vault is a number that kind of average all the sets or like fits all of them. Yeah, but again, right? So it's a bit like this is a guideline just to say it's true, but let's say, yeah, DAO can have basically the final decision on it. For instance, like you can see an example, for instance, on the low confidence, we have like, 25%. We have a couple, actually we have a couple of art that are right now running on let's say on the DA-Managed vaults on those. And what we see is really that, if you want to withdraw, you will have problems. Let's say you will need to wait, right? And then let's say if the waiting period is 14 days, right? Or sometimes even is uncapped, right? Because it's until there is available liquidity. So then, like, we have seen even cases already in the past where the assets are stuck there until further notice. So that's why we said, okay, if it's going to be a stack, at least it's like 30% of the assets, right? Until it gets unstuck. But yeah, so, and 25% on the liquidity goes more or less also on the same set, like to standardize this.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. Maybe now from a product side, Chris or Jordan, I believe you are with us here on the call now. Do these caps give enough flexibility for competitive yield here? And I'm asking specifically, maybe Chris here, because since you were the proposer of the first or this like SIP 1.6 to onboard these the first DAO risk managed USDC, I believe, vault onto Ethereum mainnet. Maybe how was your experience sort of integrating this framework already into the proposal? And how did you think about these caps?
So I mean, I work closely with Jordan on these, and I think if you can, I think you should be able to see if you open that link. Maybe I can share my screen. This works.
Yep, did it.
Everyone can see that. So this is what we've used effectively to kind of like try and pass in the variables and use the framework and so on. So we have kind of all of these hard caps. So these are the markets and stuff that we've applied these to at the moment. So all of the Morpho, Fluid, Sky, and Syrup ones are in the proposal. The ones that are not yet in the proposal are the ones that are kind of over here under the status column, which is ready for development. And just to be clear, I put this in the chat as well. This is a public site now, so you'll be able to continually see, and we'll have one of these for each DAO-Managed vault effectively. So in here, we effectively have the kind of all of the hard caps initially. So we have kind of like the age. We could probably ignore the column on the left here. This just says, does it exist in the public vaults? Like the actively risk managed vaults already. So you can see which ones are new vaults being added to the DAO risk managed vaults. But we have these various hard caps here. So it's like the age, the orbit status, and effectively, again, we're not necessarily always giving it fully detailed stuff, but more passing the risk parameters are not outlined in the risk framework. So the hard caps are nice and easy. They're yes or no's, basically. So audit status, greater than $250,000 of TVL, where we made an assumption of what the starting vault TVL would be. And the yield, the backing liquidity, greater than 60% not locked. So you see here, actually, one market fails this down here, which is the Morpho Gauntlet USDC RWA market, because it's at the moment fully backed. The backing collateral is a Falcon X token, which is a 30-day rolling private credit facility, and so on. So the backing collateral potentially has up to 30 days before liquidity can be realized from that market. But that doesn't mean that the tokens within the market are locked. So it's still just a Morpho vault. The USDC is still liquid and so on in there, but the USDC can be allocated to that. So it will then be up to the keepers to ensure like the kind of liquidity parameters are there, and so on. But you'll see here that because this hard cap failed, this column here auto assigns the various things. So obviously can't change it in in the public view, but if we go and change it on the kind of the edit view, if we were to change that to yes, then this would automatically assign this category C, I think, or probably category C based on the others on here. So this failed, but we have this override tab as well, and I put this in the thing that between us, between myself and Jordan, we've discussed, and look, we said that this actually probably should still fit into category C in our opinion from a yield point of view. And we've proposed it gets added as category C, so only 30% of the Vault TVL can ever be added at one time. But you can see along here, we've got different things like a number of leverage looping or delta neutral strategies present. So the options obviously 0, 1, or greater than 1, because those are the inputs into the risk framework. So effectively, we put the markets into here, fill out all these columns. It auto assigns a category based on the risk framework. So we've actually built into the Notion formulas the risk framework. So it spits out the category based on all of the inputs, and then obviously has an option for the proposer to override that category, and so on. And then it gives us the final category, and then we'll give it a status. So all of these markets at the moment are effectively on the onboarding proposal. Once they're live, we'll update those to live in the vault once they've been onboarded. And anyone can be able to come along here and basically see in here the state of the proposals. Basically, there's also a simple kind of view to be able to see just kind of like where all the different markets are and so on, and then which ones have been proposed for the SIP 1.5 proposal, basically. So yeah, you'll have these different views at the very top, and there'll be one of these for the ETH vault on Ethereum being proposed very shortly. As well. But yeah, as far as using the framework, I think it's very, very clear, very obvious. The difficulties, as kind of Miller and Nicola have kind of explained in the forum and stuff before, is that a lot of these markets have very complex backing collateral sometimes, and some of that collateral is obviously backed by other collateral and so on. And a lot of markets, and actually I think it was a realization diving deeper into this, that how many of the markets are actually backed just by tokens being levered up. So the a lot of USDC markets on Morpho just being used to create leverage loop strategies. At times 100% of the backing being leverage looping strategies and so on. So there was actually, from my point of view, probably a lot more going into category C here than I would have ever kind of like put money on, basically. That I would have expected. There was a lot of these in here that some of these I knew and expected to be probably category A that have come out category C, simply because the amount of collateral backing it are being used for levered looping, and so on. And then yeah, one other category that was added on here is the curator age, so that we can obviously, yeah, and as was kind of mentioned a little bit, like if a brand new curator suddenly appears on a market, then like they cannot propose to have their vault instantly added, potentially up to category C, or even category A, for example, because the protocol might have a like two-year age or whatever, but the curator may be brand new. But that's where the override comes in, because a brand new curator on Morpho may have been a curator somewhere else that is trusted or has a trusted reputation in the industry or something like that. So that's why we have this override stuff as well. But yeah, that's there. Hopefully everybody can access it. We did have some problems sharing it, but I think it should be accessible now. I'll just put the link again in the chat. But yeah.
That's awesome. This is a really great table, and yeah, it's amazing. I think resource now for the DAO also to have this publicly accessible and sort of keep track of this process, and also like sort of use this framework, I guess, going forward with the next ships or next arcs edit into the vaults. Maybe one thing that I feel like we should really make sure to be clear on is the responsibilities. Would you maybe mind you or Jordan again to sort of bring us into the picture on what are these different actors' responsibilities here? So I guess we're talking about the block analytica, we're talking about the DAO itself, we talk about keepers and potentially guardians and their role in this.
Yeah, so I think you just listed them out, but just to be very clear then, so pretty much the DAO is the main actor in these vaults. The DAO is the one that is doing all of the kind of risk management now, onboarding these markets, choosing which markets to allocate to, and so on. The keeper obviously plays a very active role still. In there, very similar to the actively risk managed vaults by BA. But they are going to have additional roles to dive deeper into these vaults in order to kind of like, as Miller was saying, like some of the caps are going to be managed by the keepers effectively. So the maximum inflows, outflows, the actual maximum deposit cap is going to be controlled by the keepers based on the underlying liquidity of the market, and eventually things like borrower concentration and so on. So the keepers will take on a more active risk management role, but obviously none of that is enforceable on chain. And then the other final one really is the guardians. So the guardians have the power now to set the market caps to 0, as well as they do on all vaults, to be able to pause any market. But pausing a market doesn't actually help address any issues in underlying markets. They can simply be at that point paused, and then it's up to the DAO to decide the next steps, and so on. So for the Arbitrum USDC vault, that would obviously been helpful, and so on, because that could have been used potentially to socialize losses and so on. But in this case, the primary role of the guardian as the very first step of defense is to be able to go in and pause a market. So if any of these markets, as you see kind of like listed here, potentially have an underlying issue or rumors of an issue on Twitter or anything like that, the guardians can make the decision to set the max deposit cap to 0. I believe by default they are all kind of int.max going into them, so they can set those to 0, which will tell the keepers to remove all liquidity as fast as possible from those markets, either instantly if that's available, or if it's not, to continuously try and remove liquidity from those markets. And it will prioritize removing any liquidity over any active rebalances on there. So kind of safety first switch. But yeah, they are the main roles, 3 main roles, or 3 only roles really within here. And then obviously BA have offered to actually update the framework as we learn more and so on, and over time, as kind of the industry and maybe the vaults and the protocol designs evolve over time.
That's awesome. I think this is again very very important to sort of make sure it's distinguished and understood also by any users coming into the protocol. Like sort of the DAO really votes on ARC onboarding and approves overrides, I guess, if necessary, and kind of owns the framework changes as well. It's great to hear that Volcanomitica has offered to sort of keep or sort of create new updates on the design of this framework. As you said, the role of keeper, sort of enforcing the caps, but kind of like adjusting for liquidity changes. I think it's going to be super interesting to observe as well here. And guardians, kind of as overall in the protocol, reactive only, emergency sort of focused, can set up the ARC caps to 0 and can create or trigger this emergency pause. So this is great. I guess maybe we can stop here with the DAO-Managed vaults. I would like to give space, of course, to any questions. If any of you guys on the call have any questions, please do raise your hands, and we can address those, and then we can slowly move to a next segment of this call. Brian, please go ahead.
I just wanted to ask for the link to the Notion so I can dive deeper.
I believe it was shared in the chat. I don't know if you've seen it. Just below your message, actually. I can reshare it again.
Yes, please. Oh, now I see.
Is it accessible?
Just a second.
Oh, could you not see my my response?
No.
Ah, okay. No. Maybe I'm just chatting away to myself in the chat.
Yeah, I can open the link. It's accessible.
Okay.
But,
okay. Yeah. Sorry, it must have been something with the settings. I guess I will have a look at it. Thanks. Yeah, for pointing it out. Yeah, please do have a look on this Notion page, and yeah, I think any sort of feedback there is going to be appreciated as well. Thank you, Chris, for sharing it. I think this is again, as I said, great resource for the DAO to have an overview of these new DAO risk managed vaults. if there are no any other questions regarding the DAO risk managed votes, we can move on to the next segment. I would maybe just like to close it with my sort of simple understanding of these DAO risk managed votes and how I am looking at it. So like these, when we talk about the classic sort of block analytica risk managed votes, these are votes that are seeking for best risk adjusted blue chip DeFi yield. Whereas the DAO risk managed votes, these are votes that are seeking for the highest blue chip yield. And I guess this is aimed for those that are maybe a little bit less risk averse users. But I think this is pretty much, if I understand it correctly, the clear or simple way to distinguish between these two votes here. So of course, maybe to close this segment off, I would ask all the delegates and everybody to check out the SIP 1.6 on the forum, where you can read more about onboarding the first DAO risk managed vote, and I believe this is going to go soon to the on-chain governance. Maybe next week. I don't know, Chris, if you have already thought about proposing it directly to Telly, or is this going to go on to the next week's governance cycle?
Yeah, the engineering team are in the process of adding this now. So yeah, apologies. It's been a few weeks in a row that we missed Wednesdays and it's gone on Thursdays. But yeah, it took a bit of time with the risk framework just to finalize everything and get all that stuff done. But yeah, that should be going up to vote on Tally today. And I will also support that with the I will also put up the vote to the ETH one as well, if possible, and also the Merkle rewards for these vaults as well, because the vaults will be deployed and effectively, I believe, handed over control effectively to the DAO with the vote and setting the risk caps and so on. So the 5,000 summer per day that was in the previous RFC for the extending the vault reward emissions as well should also go up, so they launch with vote rewards as well.
How are you actually here? Maybe one more question that popped up to my mind. How are you here thinking about the rewards? Should these votes be incentivized more? Should they be incentivized less, or just put on the same level as the risk managed by block analytica?
Yeah, so I think they were effectively. It was already proposed in the previous RFC to extend the vault rewards to set them at 5,000. So I think in the SIP there, and everyone seemed to agree on those ones. So the SIP will just follow that same 5,000. So it bases it kind of on the hyperliquid vaults based on maybe I think $1.5 to $2 million to start with, and let it flow from there basically.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. I see Brian, you have a hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just to build off the expedited proposal template. Is it a good idea to have a separate category of SIPs for DAO-managed votes, just so delegates don't get confused whether they're being added to the BA votes or the DAO-managed votes, or is there going to be a clear naming convention that prevents people from getting confused?
I think this is a really good question, and it's definitely something that actually Chris reached out to me as well in regards to, and my personal view as a governance coordinator. But please do take it as such. And I think if any confusion should stand out from these proposals, then maybe creating a new numbering system for these votes could be proposed. In my opinion, it seems like the fact that these votes are really essentially very similar to the ones that to all the other ones, right? The only difference here is the risk management here. So when we look at the way we have the numbering right now, sort of the SIP 1 stands for fleet management and SIP 2 stands for ARC management. These topics, they both apply for no matter who is doing the risk management here. So I guess it's going to be super important to make sure that when such proposal in regards to DAO risk managed votes are brought to the forum or to Telly, that it does says this in the title. This is my personal perspective on this. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about like sort of keeping it within the same numbering, and then see how that goes?
I think it's going to be much cleaner. I think just, explicitly labeling through brackets or something should be enough, unless, some issues arise.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I think sorry, I was just saying, I think from my point of view, I think I would quite like, like you mentioned, I reached out to you this morning about this, I think it would be nicer to have a separate number, so it's very clear. So maybe like SIP6 and SIP7 are the DAO risk managed vaults, just so there isn't any misunderstanding, either in the conversations or just some time spent by either engineering or either Block Analytica as well. But yeah, just my thoughts.
Yeah, I see sort of value in both of these, and I think at the end of the day, yeah. Now thinking again about it, it's whatever we can do to make sure that we are distinguishing between the two very clearly and intentionally, which I think could be helpful at the end of the day. So yeah, maybe we can adjust that and sort of expand on the SIPs numberings there. I don't think it would help the process either way. Okay, if there are no other questions again, or if there are, let me rephrase this. If there are any more questions about DAO-Managed risk managed votes, please raise your hand and let's go through them. Otherwise, yeah, I think we should move into the delegate rewards distribution framework V2. Maybe I can kick it off with sort of framing the problem here. I guess the delegate compensation here in the Lazy Summer DAO exists for three main reasons, right? It's the participation, it's the work recognition, and it's the decentralization. I think participation is actually quite strong. We also had quite high average quorum coverage, which is something that we have been actually discussing as well, whether these thresholds should be raised. But I guess maybe here I would really like to invite Curia. If you guys can walk us through the core tension that we're trying to solve, and sort of what ways have you been thinking about this? I believe you already have created a working group that is specifically focused on the delegate rewards V2. So maybe you can walk us through your processes here.
Thank you for that, Jose. So first, I want to thank the delegates who attended today and everyone who participated in the forum thread. Shout out to Vumichen, Bichan, Brian, and Rafael for joining the delegate incentive working group. Then also I want to credit 60 for his decentralization analysis. He was able to identify a major centralization risk that we needed to address. So according to the agenda, we need to define the current reward structure, measurement standards, and accountability expectations for the upcoming cycle. And to do that effectively, we're going to run a short workshop today. So first, identifying the problem. Based on the previous community call and forum discussions, we identified three main problems that we need to solve. So first is the misalignment that our 2025 delegate data analysis showed that the compensation doesn't scale with the actual workload, and we saw an inverse relationship where we overpaid during quiet months and underpaid during busy ones. And the second is a treasury risk, where we are currently holding 94% summer and only 6% in stable coins, which means a high stablecoin retainer is unsustainable and fixed retainers increase the burden on the treasury as our delegate count grows. And the third is decentralization risk. So currently it only takes 1 to 2 delegates to hit the quorum, and this is a centralization risk that we need to address. But for today, we are going to do a deep dive on community sentiment to solve the first problem, which is incentive misalignment. So our goal is to identify what is the most important to the community so that we have a North Star. We as the Delegate Incentive Working Group have a North Star to craft the formal proposal. Okay, so Curia has prepared a workshop for everyone. Here, let me go get the link. Here. I've shared the link in the chat, and that's going to be that's going to be the board that we're going to work on. Okay. So in this board, you can see that there are 6 questions that can hopefully guide us in figuring out how to create this delegate incentive framework. So running down through the questions, there is so the first question is what is your vision for the delegate program? The second question is what is the purpose and what purpose does and should the delegate compensation program serve? Third is what do you think the appropriate amount of DAO? What do you think the appropriate amount that the DAO should pay for this program? Fourth is if we are creating a dynamic base pay, what criteria do you think the tiers should be based on? Fifth is what specific contributions define high value work, both on chain and off chain? And sixth is in an ideal world, should the delegate compensation be viewed as voluntary, part-time work, or full-time work? Seventh is ideally, should the delegate be paid in summer or stable coins? And should summer be locked or vested? And 8 is, what are the KPIs that define the success of this program? So with these questions, we're going to do a silent sprint where I'm going to put 15 minutes on the clock. So your task is to get a sticky note and to write down your thoughts on all of the prompts. And there's no need to talk first so that we can get everything out of our heads. So what's important is that you're honest, specific, and you don't have to overthink it. Okay. So first I invite everyone to enter the Myra board. So far I can see 3 people inside.
It's going to be also important to make sure that you guys log in. I think you have to be logged in if you want to contribute to this, right? And if you don't mind, Catherine, if you could maybe share your screen as well, I think that would be great for anybody who is maybe not necessarily taking part in the exercise.
Here, can everyone see my screen? Okay.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, so maybe I'll set the timer first to 10 minutes. So maybe that's around a minute. That's around a minute per question. And let's see if we need some more time after that. I'll start the timer now. Okay, so I see that okay, I thought that the mouse has stopped moving. Sorry. Okay, time's up. Does anyone still need more time to write?
I personally managed to go through, let me see, 4, is it out of 8? Yeah, so I did go through like half of the questions. I don't know about others. But I think we can also continue and then take some of these things. I think this is actually really nice exercise.
Okay. I think for now we can unlock the questions so that we can get right on to discussing them. Since this is
And I didn't manage to go through all of them. Some of them need a bit more thought than 15 minutes.
Okay.
Didn't want to fill something in for the sake of it.
Okay, would you guys like maybe 2-3 more minutes?
I think if we are going to leave it open, some of these questions I would like to do a bit more research on, just to give more informed answer.
Okay. Well, given that we're pressed for time, I think the best move would be to unlock the questions, unlock the answers, and just leave it on the forum for everyone. Okay. Okay. So going through each question, so the first one, what is your vision for the delegate program? So someone answered, delegates should be motivated and reimbursed for taking an active role in the governance of Lazy Summer Protocol. For this, it's important to create sustainable rewards and sustainable reward structure and framework to support it. Okay, so I actually agree with this. Whoever wrote this, do you want to say something about this?
I mean, yeah, it was my input there. Actually, since I went, oh yeah, okay. I was just struggling to zoom in. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is just in very simple terms for me, looking at the delegate program in general. I think I do like the idea of not necessarily creating this very complicated sort of framework around it, but at the same time, it's super important that a framework is in place and that framework actually motivates delegates to do meaningful contributions. Whether that's, with the direct payment or whether that's like it has to be somehow inspiring for people, because of course, from one perspective, this is a work that's being done by individuals, and yeah, I think that's then important to make sure that it's rewarded at the same time sustainably, right? Like, of course, we can create a $25,000 payment, on monthly basis to all the delegates, and then probably we run out of treasury in very, very soon. So I think sort of the sustainability part there is super important.
I agree. A delegate framework should be two things. It should be sustainable, and it should also be, what do you call this? And the delegates must be supported as well. Right. Okay. So, does anyone want to chime in on your vision for the delegate program? Those who weren't able to put their answers here. Okay. Okay. I'll move on to the next question. Next question is, what purpose does or should the delegate compensation program serve? So our answers are, it should sustain high quality governance, strengthen decentralization, and align incentives with the long-term protocol value. I agree with that. That's a good one. Ensuring quorum is always reached and preventing malicious proposals. Uh, whoever wrote this, these three, does anyone want to give more context on their answers?
Here I would be actually personally also interested in hearing more about like sort of this ensuring quorum is always reached and preventing malicious proposals. I'm not completely sure if I understand these two, or maybe what are your thoughts on it, Catherine?
Right. Ensuring quorum is always reached. I agree with that. But actually, like what I said a while ago, that's one of the problems that we have right now. While quorum is reached, there is a centralization problem, which 60 was able to highlight. For the month of January, he was able to make an analysis that showed that we only needed the top one delegate with the high uh, voting power is able to reach quorum, and if it's not the top one, then the next one, then if the if the top person with the highest voting power votes, it will only take around 1 to 2 people to reach quorum. Yeah.
And I since I filled in the quorum one, as Catherine mentioned, it if you take out like the top three delegates with voting power, there's a big shortfall until quorum can be reliably reached. So it's a bit of a tricky situation. If 3 people don't show up, governance does completely slow down, or it just like does not, so it's a bit fragile right now. So if compensation is involved, it should at least try to motivate people to participate meaningfully in governance. And the preventing malicious proposals is just being around to stop someone like Humpy showing up and like redirecting the treasury to his wallet.
Yeah, I got that. I think it's super important. I completely agree with that. But one way that I already see this being implemented is essentially the guardians, right? Right now, guardians can cancel proposals, and I think thanks to the fact that right now there is still 1 day delay on any proposals before they're active for voting. That's sort of the timeline when the guardians can step in and identify any malicious proposals. But yeah, I think as you said, it's an important part here with the quorum. I just very quickly checked again on the status, and I see your point for sure. I believe last time we were also talking about this, and I believe Halaprix also was sharing some some of his thoughts when it comes to how it is set up on the contract level. I think you are correct with saying that I think it takes around 34 million staked summer tokens right now to reach the quorum. So essentially the first large delegate can reach it of their own. The second one has to have a help with others already. But yeah, I think it's definitely something to explore too. Yeah, but as we know, this is very much linked to the amount of summer tokens that are being staked, right? The larger the staked summer supply is, the larger the quorum will need to be. So right now there is, I mean, only in quotation marks, 248 million staked summer. So I think the more we get this number, the higher we get this number, the higher the quorum will end up being.
Another alternative thought that we had about this on how quorum can on how much more quorum can be decentralized is maybe having a number a certain number of delegates to be able to vote on a specific proposal to make sure that it's decentralized and it's not vote VP based. Yeah. So, like for example, maybe a proposal could have a minimum threshold of having five to 10 different delegates voting on it before it passes. That's one of the other ideas that we had in Curia that we're exploring.
Yeah, I think that's valid, and it's an interesting approach. I think one of the things that were also mentioned previously, I believe, maybe it was even Token Price bringing this up when we were talking liquidity of summer token. The idea there was, can the sort of the vote deposit be used as a voting token as well? So this way there would be some sort of percentual like sort of calculation of, depending on how many, let's say, LV USDC tokens you hold, this is how much voting power it gives you. And that, I think, is an interesting thing that is maybe not necessarily yet much explored. This way you are giving voting power to directly, you are tying directly the voting power to the users of the protocol, besides just the holders, let's say, of the summer token.
Right. That is really interesting. Worth exploring maybe in the future. Okay. So that's it for question 2. Moving on to question 3. What do you think is the appropriate amount that the DAO should pay for this program? Okay. So the first one is the appropriate amount, in my honest opinion, is up to $300 tiered on quality of contributions. If there is a way on how to direct protocol earnings together with summer boosts, that would be economically feasible and interesting, then that could be something to look into. Okay. Then the second one is, I think a quarterly budget should be set for delegate incentives, which can be distributed proportionally. Do the people who wrote this want to say something about it? Maybe explain a bit more.
Yeah, I can jump in. Just in terms of quarterly budget, I think, perhaps we should cap how much is going towards delegate incentives, based on the health of the treasury, and whatever that cap is, it can be distributed proportionally in any to limited number of delegates, maybe. Obviously, you guys highlighted that as the number of delegates increases, the cost increases. So this is more like a measure for the DAO to always predict, sort of like, be able to project how much it's going to spend over the next 3 to 4 months. It's 100 delegates show up out of nowhere.
Thank you for that. I think there's an interesting way to take into consideration the current treasury of summer right now. How about for the one who answered 300 year on quality of contributions?
I mean, this was pretty much just like a shot out. I kind of feel like, um, it really depends. You have some DAOs where the most active delegates are specifically almost full-time focused on that one DAO, and that becomes like almost your full-time job. And of course, here $300 is not let's say an efficient pay or a sustainable pay for these delegates. At the same time, what I observed in many DAOs is that people are contributing to multiple DAOs at the same time, and they are trying to keep track on more of them. I guess there is a there should be some sort of considerations there. I guess if you are being a delegate in 20 different DAOs, I think you might start having problems in like keeping or like making sure that you are a meaningful contributor to all of these, because it's really not just about voting, which I think is something that we're trying to tackle here. But maybe it's something to consider there as well. So I guess the 300 kind of stemmed from this idea of like, okay, let's say there is a certain amount or a certain number of DAOs that you are participating to, and then yeah, could what sort of nominal value would make sense? So this was just, I guess, my best guess going on that.
Right. I think this one is a little bit related to the sixth question, or what question was that? Yeah, the sixth question in asking whether or not a delegate compensation should be viewed as a voluntary part-time work or a full-time work. As for the amount, Curia also agrees that it should be tiered around $300, $200 to $300 per month. Since anything below than that, around $100, $200, it's a bit too low to be able to get quality, in our opinion, to be able to get quality contributions. Okay. So next, for the fourth, if we are creating a dynamic base pay, what criteria do you think the tiers should be based on? Okay. A little note is what would low, standard, and high look like? So for the first one, low active contributor would be 80 to 90% voting participation with some forum engagement and no leadership contributions. Standard would be 90% participation, meaningful written contributions, and engage in discussion threads with clear rationale for votes. And high would look like a proposal author or co-author influenced final design of a major SIT, demonstrated risk insight or treasury thinking, and is a active cross collaboration. Second is importance of the proposal. This can be quantified based on the amount of time the delegate would need to analyze the proposal. Okay, so the first one, what I'm seeing is it's a mix of the voting participation and definite and contributions in the forum. Yeah, so I'd agree that to be a delegate, you showing up is not enough. You should be able to have other meaningful contributions, most especially on the forum and discussions where most of the discussions happen. And the Jensei, would you like to chime in? I'm guessing maybe this is your answer.
Yeah, this one's mine. To be honest, it's quite difficult here. So like I did put specific numbers here. I think I do here, like I think in one of the threads that we have on the forum, I think it was Massimo Joe, I'm not sure. Somebody was suggesting there that it's sometimes it can just simply happen that you miss a vote, and that maybe doesn't necessarily represent you not being involved. So I guess that's why I really tried to put these two together with the forum. At the same time, I also remember, again, maybe this was Rafael, from a note there. He was mentioning that some of the best governance is almost a silent governance, where the how many posts, this doesn't necessarily mean that these are quality posts. And if you are doing these measurements of the engagement, unless like there are much more deeper analytics of what the written content is, then it becomes like AI swap fest, I guess, on the forum, which is not how a great governance should look like. So this is actually very, very difficult. So here again, I just kind of try to quantify it in the best of my ability here.
Yeah. What I remember in this conversation would be, I think it was in the token transferability community calls, where a delegate was able to give an analogy that back in their hometown, it was a very rural area, so not much. So houses are very far away, and and the population is just small. So so there's this fire station that that um whenever there's a fire, they just ring the bell, and people would come up to the station and help there, which yeah would come up to the station and help there. So which basically, when translated here, basically means some some delegates should just be type of an on-call type of thing, where if you're called upon to vote, then you just vote, and then after that you go back to whatever you were doing. So yeah, that's the alternative. That's another point of view in that.
That's interesting.
How about for the second one, where the importance of the proposal is should be quantified based on the amount of time a delegate would need to analyze the proposal. Um, can the one who wrote this please give some more context? Like, how would we be able to? How would we maybe be able to quantify that? Or what's the idea behind this? Okay, so no one's. So I think this weighs a little bit. I think this is similar to the one that Brian was saying about weighing proposals. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry guys. My internet, my Wi-Fi is acting up. But I do have to jump anyway. But yeah, I'll comment on this quickly. As I mentioned, from my personal voting habits, something like referral campaign payouts. I don't necessarily spend too much time. I just check the final amount. It doesn't really need too much cognitive overhead. So, as a delegate, I would not expect to receive max payment for something like that. But some other proposals are a bit more, complex. I have to do a bit more research. So this is, sort of where my thinking is around, where, in addition to having a quarterly budget, it can also be said that maybe certain SIPs will, qualify for a max of, let's say, $300. Some SIPs will only receive $20 and so forth. So, but yeah, obviously that is a bit of a complicated framework, but that is where my thinking is around.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that insight. Okay. I'll move on to the next. So specific contributions that define high value work. So answer here, the only one here is on chain. I agree. Voting in itself already brings value because it helps move the protocol from. It helps move the protocol. Yeah. Does anyone else want to chime in on this specific question?
I think some of these items would need a bit more input to go more in depth. I think. I guess with the yeah, in my opinion, it's both. High value work would definitely be both on chain and off chain as well. Voting super important, but again, I think one of the one of the important parts is here also providing the reason why the decisions has been created, and these. I mean, of course, this can be done on chain as well. Sorry, as we know, this can be done on chain via Tele. But also, if you want to explain maybe more in depth why you have voted certain direction, then I guess you do that off chain via forum or something like this. Let's say, you know, like creating a proposal, again, at least within the framework that the Lazy Summer DAO has been following so far. The workflow there is that it kind of goes off chain first, right? We have the RFC, we have the SIP, and then we have the on chain vote. So I think, yeah, both of these sort of platforms should be valued here for the high value work, I guess. And now we have also an off-chain snapshot very recently created. So maybe once it becomes more relevant, let's say a certain proposal might need to be decided upon whether it's A or B outcome rather than yes or no. And for that, I think utilizing off-chain voting platform, something like Snapshot, is a great tool. So again, if that would be the case, I guess that would also apply to an off-chain contribution.
I agree. There's more to value than just voting. There's also value in contributing and being able to explain your work. Okay. We'll go a little bit faster for the next ones since we are going over time. So in an ideal world, should a delegate compensation be viewed as voluntary, part-time work, or full-time work? So the answer here is part-time work. And I'd say that I would agree with that sentiment that for the longest that from before until now, who's that? The delegates have been able to fight for that delegate work is work and that it's something that should be recognized. And I think that goes together with this.
Yeah, I agree here. At the same time, I think it very much depends on the maturity of the DAO, right? Like a single DAO can become like large enough and like having so many processes going on at the same time that it's required to be a full-time work. And of course, I think in that case, or if such DAO is of like like a really big scale, then it requires the full-time work, but of course it needs to be within the treasury, like it needs to be scalable, right? And I think in the case of Lazy Summer DAO, I think the treasury scales with how much the protocol develops over time. So let's say the protocol develops, then I mean ideally, right? The best case scenario is that it brings more TVL, and then therefore it requires even more work to be sort of going towards the decision making here. And I think probably maybe all the DAOs, you know, they kind of begin by being voluntary. I guess before Summer has become transferable, this was essentially a voluntary work with of course payments done in summer, but at the time it had no value on the market. So they kind of start off by voluntary, then going into part-time, and then with the scale it can become a full-time work. So I think it's more like this in my opinion.
Right, and that makes perfect sense. Okay, so last two questions. So ideally, should a delegate be paid in summer or stable coins? Should summer be locked or vested? So the answer is the delegate should be paid in summer unlocked. Treasury cannot support stablecoin payments for now. Summer already has to be locked to participate in governance. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, this wasn't my take, but yeah, we can just maybe briefly explore it together if you wish.
Yeah, so that's true. Given the treasury situation right now, it cannot support stable coin payments for the long term. And for summer being unlocked, that's a great idea, of course, because the delegates, when you're a delegate and you're paid, obviously it would suck if it was still locked or vested.
I think that really depends. Like, for example, I can imagine if the payments are not let's say monthly based, but they are like somehow quarterly, let's say, then they are kind of like vested, right? Or they could be locked. Maybe preferably they're actually locked, because then they go directly into your voting power. There is of course less sell pressure, but also I think the fact that staked summer inside Lazy Summer protocol earns USDC yield and earns additional summer, I think then it kind of makes sense. Of course, if you just like give out governance token and then you make it vested and there is no additional like sort of benefit of that, then I think the delegates could look at it weirdly. But yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword. I would love to see actually payments done in USDC, even preferably in LV USDC, right? Let's say if similar to staking rewards, where it's already deposited into a Lazy Summer vote. So basically, even if you don't claim, you are earning additional interest right here. But yeah, of course, this has to be within it has to fit within the treasury. Right now, that's not possible, but I think that would be ideal case scenario, because you don't necessarily want to just keep distributing more summer tokens and creating a higher sort of sell pressure, right? If this becomes a payment or as a salary to delegates, then of course, I guess we expect them that towards the end of the month or whenever they receive these payments in the beginning of the month, they might be selling these tokens, right? Because they need to pay for whatever are their needs, which is very fair, I think, to assume. So ideally, yeah, if it can be done in USDC, then it doesn't dilute further the summer token.
Right. The most important thing right now is to make sure of the protocol's long-term health. I'm sorry, I take it back what I said a while ago.
No, it's 100%. Long-term protocol health is super important here, I think, for us to be able to continue sustainably. Yep.
Right. Thank you, Jensei, for helping us visualize what it could look like, and what it could look like, and what the delegates can for widening the options of the delegates, rather than just the usual either stable coin, or you just disperse it in the local in summer.
Oh, 100%. I really I really appreciate it.
This one, for the KPIs that define the success of the program, I think we still need a bit more time to think about this. Actually, for the whole board, I think so far we've covered a good amount of information. And I guess it would help if we let the questions simmer a bit more so that other delegates as well can chime in and we can collect a little bit more data.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's a really nice framework, and I think if we can give it another week for delegates to and the community to chime into this board via forum and then going into Miro, I think that would be awesome. And then on the next call we can come back to these answers, maybe run through it, and get one step closer to the framework that we would like to see.
Right. Hopefully, in between today and next week, more people are able to write down their answers so that in between that, we can prepare for the answer. We can prepare the answers for even more leaner discussion. Okay. So
100%.
that marks the end of this workshop. So thank you so much to everyone that contributed. It's the data that we have is really valuable. And with that, I want to hand it back to Jensei.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much again, Catherine. This, I think, a great prototype of a working session, and thank you so much, for putting this together. As we already said, I think putting it on forum, getting delegates to chime in into this until the next community call, most likely next Thursday, would be a great feat, and we can continue the discussion. So again, thank you so much for sort of going through this workshop with us. Maybe I think at the end we can sort of close this community call. I think both of today's discussions were about ownership. The DAO risk managed vaults are asking sort of, are we ready to govern capital directly, right? The delegate rewards sort of framework V2 is asking more about, are we ready to govern ourselves sustainably? And I think we are really transitioning from sort of reactive governance and voting on proposals to more structural governance, designing the framework, designing the incentives, designing risk boundaries here. I really appreciate that nothing here is rushed. We are taking our time that's needed for this. We are not hiding anything either, right? Like everything that we do is very transparent. I really, really enjoyed also the dashboard that Chris has shared with us, and it's going to be soon published on forum, where anybody can basically have a very clear overview of these risk assessments of individual votes that are coming into the DAO risk managed votes on chain soon. So I think that's really awesome. A lot is going on the forum threads, which is always allowed to see, and everything is measurable. I guess next steps will continue the feedback on the delegate framework as well. With the working group. Of course, anybody listening to this is open to join on these discussions. And I guess, I would like to keep it at that. I think it's really important, again, to mention that if there is anything that you feel could be improved, do challenge those assumptions, do bring it onto the forum, because this is where this is how essentially Lazy Summer improves. So see you all in Discord. Thank you so much for joining the call, and have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you to Block Analytica. Thank you to Chris. Thank you to everybody who joined. Thank you so much, Catherine, for walking us through the governance workshop. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jensei.